Here's my basic Waylay guide. I'm going to talk about a couple ways we can think about Waylay's kit, as well as what we want to achieve and how we want to achieve it. I'm going to use Ascent for this, but this is not actually an Ascent guide. Hopefully the things I talk about here will allow you to apply these things to other maps. So first we'll talk about the movement abilities, and we'll start with the dash. And the dash can be vertical on the first jump, but not on the second jump. So you can see here, right, vertical on the first jump. If I go straight on the first jump and then try to go vertical on the second jump, it doesn't work. And something else that's really important as well is that if you want to do the single dash is vertical if you want it to be. So it basically means that if you want to compare this to Jet, we can do updraft dash like this, or we can do a single updraft like this. So overall, I think that Waylay's comparison to Jet is decent, but I think there are parts where she falls short in comparison to Jet, because Jet separates that ability into two separate things, which means that over the course of a round, Jet can be a bit more adaptable with her movement, using updraft and dash at separate points, whereas Waylay only has one charge of this, can't get it back because refract is the rechargeable. So it means that you kind of have to choose, like you don't have the ability to choose updraft and then dash later. You have to use updraft dash or updraft, and that's it. So that's the kind of the problem with Waylay in comparison to Jet here. I think that might be one of the pain points for Waylay, where she doesn't actually end up getting played over Jet, but there is an even bigger one which I'll go over very, very soon. So some pathings with the dash are going to be very similar to updraft dash, like this. You can also do something on A like this, and as you can see here, like Waylay's really good with the double dash of getting around corners. So you can do stuff like this if you want to. I don't think this specific pathing is good, just to make, like, just to say. But in other maps, if you can replicate this, like going around a corner with the double dash into a good position, then I reckon it'd be quite good. Just on Ascent on this specific angle, I don't like this one. It could be good though in certain situations, so give it a try, I guess. So next we'll talk about Refract. And if I talk about Jet with the light speed, I'm going to talk about Chamber with Refract, because this is essentially the same as Rendezvous, but instead of being based on radius, it's based on time, which does make it worse in defensive applications, but makes it a bit better in offensive ones, or a lot better in offensive ones, because you can go and explore a lot of places and then come back if you want to. And that's important as well, if you want to. You're not, unlike Phoenix ult, you're not forced to come back. You can actually just stay in a good position and take a nice angle, right? You can just stay, like, for instance, in the CT smoke, if your time is about to run out, but you know that you're going to get one kill here or maybe more, or like a really good timing, then you don't have to actually go back, which is pretty good. Okay, so looking at the two abilities we've just looked at, if you have a Jet or Chamber or like Phoenix experience, you probably will have a good time learning these abilities because they're very, very similar. But one of the most important things about agents in Valorant, really, is how you combine your abilities. And these two abilities are on the same kit. We haven't had that before. So how do we actually get value from these abilities and use them in combination with each other? Okay, so the first and most obvious combination is going to be place Refract, and then double dash out into sight or wherever you want to go, get your kill, whatever, multiple kills, and then dash back. Obviously, you don't always have to dash back if the sight is clear. There's pretty much no reason to dash back. You should probably be maybe more aggressive, or at least hold that space that you've got. That kind of stuff, right? You also want to be careful as well. If there are multiple people on site and you've refracted back, your teammates might get baited by you getting refracted back. So then they're in a position where they're 1v2 or 1v1, where they thought they were going to be in a 2v1. And that's not to say that combo is bad. It's just that you want to be careful with how you use it. So another way that you could use this combination is going to be in the center of the map. You can kind of use it to either fake, or sometimes it's not exactly the most ideal, especially dependent on map. It might be just a way to be a bit more slippery in the mid round and to kind of fake where your position actually is. So you can use refraction in the center of the map here, go clear a bunch of space, and try and get as much distance as possible. So then you can kind of fake where you are, or like what you want to do, what your intentions are on the map, and then TP all the way back to the center of the map, where it should be easier, for instance, to go towards A. So just another way that you can use this. Okay, so another combination that you can use your abilities in is to refract first and kind of use it like a drone and kind of find where you think the enemies are going to be playing. And then if you find someone, you contact or whatever, you can go back. And then you can use that information to dash appropriately, right? So you basically are just using the refract to kind of get the info for where you actually want to dash to. So you're kind of using them a bit disconnected in some ways, but they're a very good combination in that way. It's kind of like if Jet has drone, which is kind of crazy. Obviously, it's a bit more risky than that because you're not a drone and you can just die in your refract. But yeah, you basically, instead of like, say if you found someone on site that you want to take a fight on, then you can dash onto site. Equally, if you found someone like close near the logs or something, then you do a single dash past them and fight them like this or whatever. There are plenty of opportunities. Maybe you heard someone in a market or someone tried to spray you in market, whatever, you can dash on them. If you have a judge or something, they're probably dead. Like that's kind of like how you want to see it, and I think it's a pretty good way to use the abilities. Quickly, I'll talk about saturate and the hinder status effect. So I do have I actually have a specific lineup here that I do use, that I can use, and it's pretty good. Works for stairs. Basically, what it is it's just there to like kind of act as a set piece thing. But this is also one of the problems with Waylay, and why I don't think that she's going to be played over Jett a lot of the time, is because if this was a smoke, she would be better than Jett. 100% she'd be better than Jett. But it's not, right? And yeah, it's nice to have something that helps you go out. It's not a flash. It's not a stun. It's a hinder. And hinders, I think, are just a bit worse than the rest of the status effects. So I just don't see her doing it, right? And the thing is like, this is actually more exemplified on A. So if I quickly go over to A, you can see here, right, on A, if I dash out, if I was Jett, there would be a smoke here, and it'd be so much easier for me to play out this situation. Instead, I have refract, which means that what happens here instead is that I have to use a lot more like reaction time and really, really fast decision making to actually make the decision to refract back after what I see, rather than just a Jett dash into a smoke, which is a lot less pressure on the Jett player. So just something to bear in mind, that if the hinder, like if this ability was better, it probably would be good. If it was a stun, it'd be better, but I don't see them getting rid of the hinder status effect, because I think it's really important for the identity of Waylay. So I don't think she's going to see that much play because of saturate, unless saturate gets like a buff or something. But something else I want to talk about with saturate is that I do like the actual like position, like the position, the way it throws, like the arc that it has, very similar to Phoenix Molly. So I can do something that's very similar to Phoenix Molly, like this, right? I don't quite have the lineup because I haven't done it yet, but it should land there, like, and you can actually use this to your advantage, right? You can go take a fly on someone that's like hindered or whatever, right? Whatever the pathing is for that, then that'll be it, right? That's what I like about saturate. It's kind of good for Waylay, but the actual status effect itself, the hindering status effect, isn't that great. So we'll move on to the ult next. Okay, so now we'll talk about the ult, and the ult did surprise me with how good the radius is. I actually thought that it was a bit smaller than this, like thinner than this, but it's actually not too bad. The part that I don't like about it though is that it inflicts hinder, and as I've already mentioned, I don't think hinder is a great status effect. I mean, it's fine, it definitely gives you advantages in fights. It's just that if you take into account like what slot Waylay will take from teams and team compositions, does it warrant having this ult over something like a breach ult when you've got Teo now that exists, and Teo breach is a really strong combination? Does Waylay really take that slot from breach? And then you look at like other like duelist ults, right? Does she take a Yoru slot away from someone because of her ult? Not really. Does she take a Jett slot? Maybe, but then again, not the greatest event. I think entry wise, Jett might be a bit stronger than her, especially over the course of a round. So for me, I'm not exactly sure how she will fit into the game. I think she might struggle simply because of how meh hindrance is. But we'll just have to see how it goes. And this is where I'm going to quickly mention two things I forgot about when talking about the individual abilities, and that is the light speed. So with the light speed, you can do dashes like this that allow you to kind of see a bit of information with where you turn to, right? If I do this way, you can kind of see, I saw in the corner, if you look in the minimap, you would actually see people there if they were there. So it's actually pretty good, valuable information. For you, you might just see, like, if you're not looking at the minimap specifically, you might just see a question mark when you land and that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's pretty good for information, so you can use that to get info and then use your refract to then fight the person you saw. So you can use them in like the reverse combination as well of what I already mentioned. I quickly want to add on that this is the weakest combination of your movement abilities, and your dash is better used as a dash rather than a way to get information for your refract. But it is an option, but I just wouldn't use it very much. And it's probably the reason why I initially forgot about it. Okay, so the last thing I forgot to mention was, can Waylay operate her? And the answer is 100% yes. She essentially has Rendezvous plus Jett Dash, but she also doesn't have to care about where she actually is, because Jett Dash does have to worry about the geometry of the map, right? You can't just dash through walls. Waylay can TP back to Refract from anywhere, right? And even Chamber has this limitation where he has to stay within his radius, right? So Waylay, if anyone, can take the most off angles or the most random positions to then take fights in. It's not always important for the operator to do that, because honestly, being on angle with an operator is completely fine. You generally would just take your first shot and kill them anyway. Obviously, there are times where you want the off angle, but that's usually more applicable to rifles. But for the most part, she's probably the best agent in the game for taking off angles now. as long as she's set up prior to taking that off angle. Okay, so that's it for my guide on Waylay. If you have any questions about Waylay, or if you have anything that you've done on Waylay that's pretty cool and you want to share with everyone else, then feel free to put it in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in my next one.